Through both postural assessments and movement assessments, we have determined that most people will have gluteal dysfunction. Their glute musculature does not seem to contract appropriately, whether it's concentrically, eccentrically, whether it's to perform extension, external rotation of the hip, or abduction. And that has tremendous consequences onto our health, specifically our spine health. So it makes it extremely important for us to focus on regaining hip hinge ability and hip function overall. And the first thing we got to do is a hip hinge or a hip bridge. And the hip bridge is one of those exercises that gives us a lot to gain from, but without a lot of risk on the back. Because you see, we're lying down supine on the ground, and the spine is not stacked against gravity or loaded. And so when we ask people to do this exercise, we get a lot of variations in execution. And a couple of things that we're looking for, and I'm gonna share them with you so you can check with your clients, is whether they can maintain stability of their pelvis in certain movements, and whether they can perform an eccentrically focused hip bridge, eccentric contraction focused hip bridge. And this is what this looks like. So we're going to lie supine. And the first thing we ask our clients is to bring their heels close, because the closer the heels, the more we're going to engage the glutes themselves. Then we do a hip bridge, palms are on the ground, and we ask them to lift one leg up. And a lot of the times what we see is the hip will dip down, okay? So what this signals is they're not able to produce sufficient strength through the extended hip in order to maintain a neutral pelvis. And then we ask them to do the other side, and we want to see if there's any symmetry in their ability to do this exercise, okay? All right, so that's the first thing. Now, this is actually a core stability test, and we call it a core stability test is because the glutes do not work on their own, or the hip muscles don't work on their own. They connect through the back and the front with muscles of the abdomen region and the lower back region and beyond in order to facilitate spinal stability. Okay, so what's next? Then we ask them to, okay, you did a hip bridge up, how do you come down to the floor? And we want to observe that. We're not going to tell them. And as they come down to the floor, sometimes we see this. So the spine kind of sticks to the ground gradually, one bit at a time, and then the pelvis hits the ground. And the problem with that is that from here to here, there's actually no change in the length of the glutes, okay? Nothing. And then we're just going to drop it to the ground, and therefore very little eccentric lengthening of the tissue was required. And so what we want to see is they came here to the top, chest is up, spine is neutral, we're not caved in like so, and then the pelvis comes down first. We touch the ground and then drive again, chest and hip, and then come on down and touch. And the outcome there is the fact that, hey, you're going to get much more gluteal engagement on the way down than if you were to just drop through the back and then touch, okay? And then we do the other thing, the other way around, where we come like so, and then extend the spine. And so we're using our back musculature, our erector spinae, to drive the pelvis up instead of really focusing on getting the hips to do the work. In this case, glute max. All right, so that is a strict bridge that we want to make sure our clients can do. And this is something we will tell them to practice at home as well. All right, what's next? Well, if sometimes that's difficult, we do a hip bridge and they say, oh, I really feel my back. So that means they're not able to really fire up their glutes. So we do two things. First is we're going to ask them to do this variation, but because the base of support is smaller on the feet, we're going to open up the arms for additional support and then fire up. So then we get, okay, that fires up the glutes much more. That's because we're abducted and externally rotated, so the glutes are a lot shorter. The range is smaller though, but they get a little bit better in connecting with the glutes here. Now, this is a limited exercise in range and scope, and sometimes people have really restricted adductors, and so as they come here and then they need to lift, we find that they bring the knees together and they say the same thing, hey, my back hurts, my back bothers me, or I feel some tension. And so what we do next is we use a band and we place it around the thighs. And when we do that, and we ask them to push against that band, yeah, the band is around the thighs, just the mini band, then we see, oh, okay, they fire up the glutes because they need to abduct, and then lift up, and they find it a little bit easier. If your client lifted a little bit properly and then dipped with the hip like so, as opposite to the back, that's a win, okay? And then from week to week, we want to make sure we extend. Now, if that range is restricted, then what you want to consider is releasing the rectus femoris, the TFL, the hip flexors in general, because those are the antagonists of hip extensors. They produce flexion. And the adductors as well. So maybe you want to do a bit of foam rolling or dynamic stretching, even training, right? Because training will help lengthen a tissue if it's done for the full range of motion. All right, so what other options are there? Well, this is obviously the glute bridge, right? And we discussed how to do it properly. Let's make it a little bit harder. Well, we can add a load right here below the belly button. It could be a band, or it could be a kettlebell or a dumbbell or a plate. A ball as well, a medicine ball works quite well. And if your client has some abdominal discomfort, then maybe you want to use like a band here with weights on either side. So you pack the band several times, you place the weights on either end, and you create like a belt on top of the belly and then lift. All right, so what else can we do? We can also put a band and stick it to the ground with our hands and push against it. This tends to work. Or we can move on to figure 4. On the figure 4, both legs are lifting, okay? Both glutes are working, but one is extensor, and is an extensor of the hip. The other one is externally rotated, and so it performs a slightly different function. And then we switch to the other side. But this is not a single leg bridge. Do not confuse the two, okay? And then we have the single leg bridge where the foot is in the air. We drive and we land. All right. Now we did that for the glutes very well. Let's move on to the hamstrings. So to activate the hamstrings, we move the feet further out, and the goal there is the further we go, the more hamstrings we're going to engage. And so how far do we go? We go as far as we can keep the toes on the ground when we're down. Palms on either side, feet hip width apart, slight arch in the back, brace across, drive, and then again, dip the pelvis first. And again. Now, a little thing that we've created is bring the toes in and then place them down, keep the knees apart, and then drive, and this will engage the medial hamstrings a bit more, yeah? And it will have an adjustment effect at the knee, because you see a lot of people walk with their toes out, and a lot of the times that's because the bicep femoris is locked short, whereas the medial hamstring, the semitendinosus and semimembranosus, are just not doing such a great job. This will also engage the pes serine musculature, like the sartorius, the gracilis, and of course the medial hamstrings. Pes serine is the tendon on the medial side of the knee that attaches to the tibia. So that's another option. And of course, dig in the heels, drive up. And what we're saying here to the body is, I want your gastrocnemius to be lengthened, the calf muscle, the big calf muscle, whilst the hamstrings are shortening. And we can do this here, or we can do it one leg at a time. This is a lot more difficult, obviously. Or we can do an isometric hold and walk. Additionally, we can slide down, place our heels on top of the bench. Yeah, again, slight arch in the back, lift a little bit, go to the top, and dip the hips down, just like so. And finally, get to the top, and single leg variation. That's another one. Come on down. Another one is a mix of hip and hamstring. Hop. And again, can we coordinate so that the pelvis drives down slowly and with control, and the movement is coming from the hip, or are we still using the back musculature and spine? And then, of course, the other way around. Whoops. Excellent. All right, guys, so those are a few variations of your hip bridges, their purpose, what to look for, what you might be confronted with your clients, and what to do about it. We hope this is very beneficial to you in your practice. And to learn more about proper movement, coaching, and helping people move well first and then move more, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Check out our Instagram page as well, and get in touch with any questions. We'd love to hear what kind of challenges you face in your practice and share with you what we found to be working. We're here to help people live well. We want to accomplish that together, and we need to do this every day to make a difference. That's our goal. So if that rings true to you, join the community, engage, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.